Fire plays an important role in determining the sort of vegetation that grows in a particular area. In southeastern Australia, the summers are usually hot, not much rain falls, and strong winds often develop which help to fan the flames of bushfires. Under these conditions, bushfires are a frequent and often disastrous event. Since the arrival of Europeans, the landscape has been dramatically altered. Much of the bush has been cleared for agriculture, and many people now live in rural and urban fringe areas where bushland and agricultural land meet. This increase in population and property has had two effects. The numbers of small fires has increased, either through accident or deliberate burning, and these small fires are put out as quickly as possible so that the threat to life and property is minimised. This has resulted in more low-intensity fires more often, but burning less area. About 75% of all fires in Victoria burn less than 5 hectares. Many types of bush found in southeastern Australia have burned periodically over thousands of years, from fires probably started by lightning strikes. During this time, plant species developed ways of coping with fire, so that when they were burnt, the species were not wiped out forever. Because people are usually quite efficient at putting out the many small fires which do start, many areas of bush which would have burned naturally every 10, 20 or 30 years are no longer burnt. Fire is well recognised as a major natural ecological factor in many habitats, and this change in the frequency, size and intensity of fire has created a number of problems for the people responsible for the management of parks and reserves. Some plants need fire before they will flower and produce seeds. Others, like the peas and wattles, have only a short lifespan. They produce seeds with an extremely hard seed coat, and these seeds will lie dormant in the soil, possibly for as long as 50 or 100 years, until the heat from a bushfire cracks the seed coat and allows the seed to germinate. Large numbers of wattle seedlings, all of the same age, are often seen in the months after a fire has burnt the area. Other plants such as banksias and many of the eucalypts keep their seed in hard woody fruits which will not open unless exposed to the heat of a fire. When the fire passes, the seeds drop to the ground and begin to germinate. Eucalypts are found in all of our fire-prone forests, but most species are not killed by fire. The leaves are sometimes burnt, but mostly they're just scorched and drop off the tree many weeks later. Hidden under the bark of these trees and on the stem just below the soil in some other species are reserve buds called epicormic buds. If the tree or shrub is burnt, these begin to shoot very quickly, and the blackened tree trunk is rapidly covered with new branches and leaves. Many other plants do not have special ways of regenerating after fire. These species avoid fires by growing in wetter areas where the chance of fire is much less. The rangers working in parks and reserves must deal with fire on two levels. Uncontrolled fires must be prevented from entering the parks from the surrounding agricultural land, and fires must also be prevented from leaving the parks and threatening surrounding property. But because many of the vegetation types within these parks would naturally have burned, the rangers must also develop a program which approximates the natural burning cycle and regenerates areas of ageing bush. Fire is often used for this type of habitat management. Fire breaks to control wildfires can be slashed to reduce fuel, but some areas of bush and grassland may be burnt periodically to reduce the fuel levels. To help decide when to burn these fire breaks, the amount of very fine flammable fuel can be measured and the area burnt when it reaches a predetermined level. For this sort of management, it is generally accepted that the fuel be kept below 15 tonnes per hectare. This is about 1.5 kilograms per square metre. However, using fire as a tool to manage the age and health of a vegetation type is much more difficult. Before a program can be developed, the rangers need to know exactly what plants are present in the area, their flowering and germination requirements, how long they usually live for, and how the number of different plant species changes over time. To determine exactly what sort of vegetation they are dealing with, and to help predict what is likely to happen if the area is burnt, a small sample area is often investigated first.
That's that puppy grass. Yeah, that's another one. Because it's just bigger, but it's the same. Yeah.
So up to 8-3.
Right. Yeah, the daikon is very close. This is a different grass, and it's a sort of a tussock type grass, so it'll be interesting.
The plants in the area are sampled using a number of small quadrats. The quadrat is marked with a tag so that it can be relocated after the area is burnt, and all the plants present in the quadrat are recorded and plotted on a map. This allows individual plants to be relocated to see how they have responded to burning.
We're putting down faces as well.
No.
I don't know, it's pretty common.
Because it's underneath all this grass. Separate sort of
What sort of coverage would you give the power?
Some of these are older, but the thing that's going to give it now is a kick-on.
Well, it's cleared the area.
It's cleared the area a bit, and we've got nutrients back in it, which is good. You see, there's this sort of thing here. There's a lot of these.
Acacia seedling in there.
Oh, okay.
There's
What's
another
that?
acacia seedling that we don't quite know what that is. And we only had sort of 5 things before it was burned, so that's something that's extra. Does that look different or is that the same thing?
Well, no, I think it might be the same thing.
What about, we'll try some of that more rough looking grass in there, like this.
Resampling the quadrats will continue for many years so that plants' responses to fire can be followed. Changes in the vegetation over the years can also be recorded using photographs. A fixed photo point is established so that exactly the same area is photographed at regular intervals after the fire. Even armed with all this data, it's not easy to predict the outcome of any particular burning program. The events occurring in an area after it's been burnt has a great deal of influence on the new vegetation. Temperatures are important. Too hot or too cold and the seeds may not germinate or the young seedling may die. Not enough rain may cause the soil to dry out before the young seedling has established an adequate root system. Too much rain and the ash and topsoil may wash away, leaving only the subsoil, which is usually unsuitable for germination or growth. Competition for water, soil nutrients and living space is also important. Seedlings are often found in dense clusters, perhaps where a wattle pod or a eucalypt fruit has dropped and opened. Many seeds germinate, but very few of the seedlings survive the struggle for resources. To account for these factors, a program may be developed where only part of an area is burnt at one time. This leaves a mosaic of vegetation, so that if the species response to burning is poor in one year, it may be compensated for by a good response in subsequent years. Burning for habitat management aims to maintain high plant and animal diversity. Careful planning and a well-designed burning program and post-fire monitoring will mean the difference between habitats with few plant species and unsuitable for many animals, and habitats which are as diverse and species-rich as possible. Fire is potentially one of the most powerful tools available to reserve managers for the maintenance of certain vegetation types. Using fire without adequate pre-planning will result in vegetation with few species present and which is generally unsuitable as habitat for many animal species. The wise use of fire requires the careful collection and interpretation of data. With this preparation, we will be well placed to develop a program of burning which will maintain the quality and species diversity of our parks and reserves, and which will allow us to preserve both plant and animal habitat.